Hello, our group consists of Christina Dunlap, Kristen Dillon, and Sarah Burton, and myself, Alicia Mann. Our book is Reading Don't Fix No Chevys by Michael Smith and Jeffrey Willem. In this book, it describes a study that was conducted by these two men that examined boys' perceptions of reading and how we can make reading a better experience for these young men.
Hi, my name is Stan and I am in 11th grade. In my spare time, I love to get into a really good book. I like reading books because they let you think about certain things that have happened or they let you escape things you don't want to think about. Reading a book is different from watching TV because you can imagine it however you want to. My favorite kinds of books to read keep me on my toes, make me think a lot, and are controversial.
Hi, my name is Maurice and I am in 10th grade. I enjoy reading but not normally what my teachers assign me to read. I mean, who wants to read about ancient history? If I can't relate to it, what's the point of reading it? I feel like I'm losing interest in reading because I can't relate to anything my teachers have me read. I wish they would consider the things I like and am interested in when they assign books.
Hi, my name is Brandon, and I am in 12th grade. I would rather hang out with my friends than read a book. I have never been interested in reading. I like making computer programs and playing video games. If I have to read something, I will, but I would rather not.
What would you do? Imagine you have a 7th grade European American male in your classroom who has professed that school is a mind-numbing bore. He is failing English and refuses to do his work. He loves the social nature of school and plays on the football team. He is currently reading Moby Dick for his own pleasure because it is some damn good stuff. What strategies would you use to engage this stereotypical student in meaningful literacy experience? Chapter 1. What's going on? The widest current gender gap for learning achievement recorded by standardized measures is in the area of literacy. The ETS reports that the gap in writing between 8th grade males and females is more than 6 times greater than the differences in mathematical reasoning. Current framing of the issues. There's a new boys movement that says the general perception is that boys are in trouble, and this has led to increased attention to boys. Some argue that this is caused by biological determinism, which says the testosterone of adolescent boys propels them into activity instead of learning. Some argue social constructivism, which says boys are not as good of readers as girls because of social norms. Boys and literacy. Walker Dean argues that boys are pushed by culture towards certain conceptions of masculinity and associated behaviors that run counter to literacy, which is often presented culturally as a passive and private act that is feminized. So what can teachers do to combat this problem? We can change the instructional environment, methods, and expectations, which will change the experience for our kids. So, do you think the problem with literacy in boys is caused by biological factors or social factors? Chapter 2, Going with the Flow. According to Smith and Wilhelm, boys need a sense of competence and control. They need a challenge that requires an appropriate level of skill, clear goals and feedback, and they need a focus on the immediate experience. What does it mean to have a sense of competence and control? Being confident can act as a motivator for kids, and Having choice allows students to feel a sense of control. A challenge that requires an appropriate level of skill. Boys lose interest when they are not challenged appropriately. If the boys feel too challenged, then they return to a domain in which they feel more competent. Clear goals and feedback. Without a clear sense of a goal, it is impossible for a child to feel a sense of competence. Without a goal, it is impossible to identify an appropriate level of challenge. Kids also need immediate feedback. A focus on the immediate experience. Boys in the study valued their favorite activities for the enjoyment they took from the immediate engagement in those activities. What's important to boys? This study found that boys found an importance in getting away. School was a source of stress for some boys in the study. They needed to get away from it. Even activities that brought joy brought pressure as well. They found importance in activities. More than half the boys in the study thought physical activity was important. Many boys in the study tried to avoid having nothing to do. They also found importance in avoiding a routine. Many boys wanted to avoid routine and do things in new and different ways, and school was seen as a routine activity. Where do we start? Teachers, instead of asking, what am I preparing my students for, ask, what is the quality of the experience I want them to have today? This makes teachers more immediately accountable for curricular and instructional decisions. Sequencing curricula. Curricula need to be structured so that the understanding students gain in one text or activity can be brought forward to the next one. This allows the students to gain a sense of competence. In reading instruction, you need to identify relatively broad genres that invite the application of similar interpretive strategies. Don't slice instruction into tons of genres.
How can you relate to what Smith and Wilhelm say about a boy's reading needs?
Chapter 3 was titled Do the Right Thing. The use of student profiles. Student profiles were created to suggest different ways of being literate. Participants were asked the following questions based on the profiles. What, if anything, do you admire about the character in the profile? What, if anything, don't you admire about the character in the profile? Where, if anywhere, do you see yourself in the profile? The instrumental versus the immediate. What importance is placed on instrumental value of school versus the immediate? Boys value activities where they will immediately get a sense of how they are doing. Every boy expressed the importance of schooling for the future. Even in their discussion of reading, they talked about the benefits of reading for the future. What's the price of success? The conflict between being competent and being social. How did the participants view the combination of reading competence and being social? The boys expressed their value in having the ability and desire to read. All the boys believed that being social embodied well-roundedness. The boys showed, through their discussions, an admiration for the students that were focused on their goals and/or interest in reading, yet believed that they were lacking in social areas because of it. You have to be doing more than school. The impact of race and class. According to Smith and Wilhelm, it is important to have curricula responsive to the needs of a diverse student population and to the rapid production of a new knowledge in new text forms. Participants had more admiration for the profile that depicted a student from a lower social class. What this makes us think about: how to make reading less schoolish. Schoolish forms of literacy are often rejected by boys. Based on prior chapters, boys focus on the immediate experience. Schoolish reading separates itself from immediate uses and functions, and its emphasis is not seen to be relevant outside of school. How learning takes place outside of school. It is personally purposeful. It takes place in a real context. Assistance is provided by others within that context to meet a shared goal. The learning will be immediately applied in that real context. What is front-loading and why is it important? Front-loading is a way of activating students' prior knowledge. Research has shown that little comprehension takes place without having the students make connections. Activating prior knowledge is a valuable learning strategy because it provides students with an opportunity to connect information and experiences they already know to new concepts and ideas. As those connections are forged, comprehension of new material becomes an easier task for students, increasing their ability to learn in more profound ways. Chapter 3 Discussion Question. Competence, control, and clear goals were areas that were seen to have the utmost importance to the boys that were interviewed. What is the importance of each area? Chapter 4 was titled, Mostly Outside, Rarely Inside. Reading logs. They were used to get a better idea of the purpose of literacy for participants and what they wanted to use it for. School and home literacy were seen as separate interests and were not initially included in the students' logs. The boys' thoughts were that literacy was solely defined as school-related activities. Competence. Competence is one of the measures of control over literacy activities. The participants demonstrated their importance of competence through their display of admiration for their interests. When the participants felt competent in subject or activity, they also found it fun. The role of the teachers with competence. Based on a contract with the students, the following points were featured. A teacher should try to get to know me personally. A teacher should care about me as an individual. A teacher should attend to my interest in some way. A teacher should help me learn and work to make sure that I have learned. A teacher should be passionate, committed, work hard, and know his or her stuff. Control. It was clear from the study that the boys wanted to read what they had interest in, where they could feed into the information that they had gathered prior to the reading. Interests were brought to school, not developed there. According to Smith and Wilhelm, the desire for choice and the ability to pursue one's interest as an exercise of freedom and possibility was pervasive in the study. Challenge. Appropriate challenges need to be established. When challenges were given that were thought of as appropriate and interesting, the participants enjoyed the tasks. School challenges are often dismissed because of concerns in ambiguity, length, style, and unfamiliarity. Clear goals and feedback. Boys need to see the value of the task they are asked to complete and the connection to their lives. Many believe school assignments are purposeless and contrived. If it is viewed that if an assignment is not graded, it is not worth doing. Gaining information and figuring things out were major components of text that drew the students' interests. Chapter 4 Discussion Question. In our classrooms and everyday situations, how can we provide competence to students without holding on to the control?
Chapter 5. May I have the envelope, please? A focus on immediate experience. Boys see school as routine, decontextualized, and separate from real life. They also see school literacy as boring, difficult, and off-point. They do enjoy seeing their friends and socializing at school. They do enjoy literate activities that are fun, that pass intrinsic and immediately functional value, and that connects them to their lives. Students must have intrinsic motivation to achieve. The importance of the social. Teachers are not part of the boys' social network. There seems to be a general distrust of English teachers and reading. English teachers generally don't understand what we really like to read, so we are unlikely to take their recommendations. But if really people we know are reading and liking this stuff, well then maybe it's worth a try. This was the general attitude of the boys. Relationships, characters, and authors are important to the boys. In engaging in literate activity. Importance of social support for literary activities went beyond selecting text. When the literate activity provided the occasion for a social connection, the boys had intrinsic motivation for their engagement. Boys complained that in high school there is little opportunity to work with others. Schoolwork was seen as an individual pursuit. In the use of technology, the computer was a major tool employed in boys' literate labs. Computers facilitate social interactions. Instant messaging, electronic chat rooms, and regular email exchanges were also popular in the boys' labs. The importance of engaging materials. Boys expect to be engaged and absorbed in the first few paragraphs. Texts need to be storied, visual, exportable into conversation, sustain engagement, be novel, be edgy or subversive, be funny, and have powerful ideas. A close look at the boys' reading. Research by Pod and Hunt said readers take 3 basic orientations. Information-driven, focuses on understanding the literal details of the text. Story-driven, tends to emphasize plot, character, and event. And point-driven is sharing and comparing of values and beliefs. Michael and Smith identified another orientation. Association-driven, responses focus more on the personal associations the story evoked than on the story itself. Story acts as a springboard for recalling and examining the reader's personal experience. The researchers of this book also added 2 more orientations. Evaluation-driven. This is when students comment on their perception of the quality of the story as they read, and disengaged readings. This is when no stance or effort was given as a response to the story. This makes us think about cultivating concern for characters. How can we help readers develop relationships with characters? The importance of relationships was a major theme in both the reading logs and in the study. When the boys developed relationships with characters, they were more likely to have positive reading experiences. Ways to cultivate concerns for literary characters. Students regard literary characters as completely different from themselves. Stimulate the conflict that a character faced before students begin to read. Discussions question for Chapter 5. Why do you think these are the types of texts boys are most interested in?
Chapter 6, The Profound Challenge, Implications for Classroom Practice. Why do we teach? When asking yourself this question, you should consider, would you rather your students read the newspaper every day or a novel once a month? Would you rather your students read lots of a series like Animorphs or a very occasional Newbery winner? And would you rather your students always did their homework but rarely read for enjoyment, or that they often read for enjoyment but did not do their homework? What do we teach? You need to create a context that will encourage problem solving. One way to do this is by developing inquiry units. In doing so, the students will gather and develop information, analyze it, and organize it in an effort to figure out or deepen their understanding about a contested issue. Students will engage more deeply with literacy when used to inquire into issues connected to their lives. They provide a challenge that requires an appropriate level of skill, and they also motivate students because it provides clear goals and feedback. When doing an inquiry unit, you need to consider the importance of the social, which means inquiry is best conducted in groups for purposes of informing and convincing others. The culminating event of an inquiry is to display position by creating some kind of artifact. Learning is not internalized or owned by students until it's reorganized, transformed, and represented in a new set of signs that the student owns. This also represents the learning-centered model. It aims to capitalize on the expertise that students bring with them to class. A suggested reading on this topic is the strategic reading, guiding students to lifelong literacy. The selection of text. You need to incorporate more information-oriented text. Boys need to be engaged emotionally with text first, or they'll never proceed to more nuanced reading. Have fun with it. Pick texts that bring laughter into the classroom. This will sustain their interest, engagement, and eventual development of expertise. Most importantly, give students choice, such as free time to read, literature circles, and book clubs. How do we teach? You need to begin with front-loading. Do much of your teaching before the students read the text. You need to activate their background knowledge and make reading social. Invite the family into it and have students work with one another. Many boys draw a hard line between school and home. Their school lives have a procedural rather than substantive engagement, which means they just go through the motions to get the work done rather than engage deeply. You need to recognize and work with individual differences, their variety, and the plurality, and make diversity a strength in your classroom. So you need to consider which end of the spectrum would you fall if you asked yourself the would you rather questions.
This graphic organizer is a summary for each chapter for the book Reading Don't Fix No Chevys, Literacy in the Lives of Young Men.